All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. If you are not giving the webcast today, please go backstage. If you are me, who's just killed the morale and the tempo of the webcast today, I guess I'll just stay here. Thank you so much for joining us for this Black Hills Information Security webcast today. We show up every Thursday because you show up every Thursday. It's a vicious cycle, and we appreciate you being a part of this. We got Kellli and CJ with us today. Kellli is on staff with our doing GRC, and CJ, you love compliance more than anyone else I've ever met, and so I think governance and compliance, like it's your jam, and I love that. And so Kellli and CJ together, I think is going to be an amazing webcast today. If you're in Discord, please go ahead and engage with us. We're currently seeing who actually makes it to 10 webcasts, engaging with us in Discord, and we appreciate that. But if you have any questions to ask at all during the webcast, you can ask inside Zoom, and then we will ask those questions at the end during a Q&A. And so if you have questions, please ask them. Other than that, CJ and Kellì, it's all yours. Ready?
All right, excellent. Thanks, Jason. And I just want to say kisses to all of my GRC friends who showed up today. I know we get picked on. We're seen as the standing by the water cooler by ourselves. We don't have very many friends. I totally disagree with that. This stuff is fun and it's exciting. And when you get in trouble, you want to have your GRC friend with you. And speaking of having my GRC friend with me today, CJ, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Yeah, so hi. I definitely have the love-hate thing with the GRC, and so that's why I hired Kellì, was to take this over mostly for me.
Exactly. So, and I also was hoping to see everybody's ugly sweaters in Discord, but then that would be really a lot for our content creation team. But I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad CJ's here. Let's dive in. There's going to be more than just GRC. We've got a couple other goodies for you today. Is our agenda for today. We're going to go through 4 areas. We're going to do a quick GRC highlights for 2023. We also have a naughty and nice list. And if you joined us for pre-show banter, you know who at BHIS is on the nice and naughty list. I'm not going to name names. We also have some holiday recipes from our coworkers at BHIS. And then at the end of the webcast, we've got a little end of the year checkup. You know, when you go to the dentist and the dentist says, you know, you really need to floss a little bit more, or, yeah, you're not getting the toothbrush all the way back there where you should be. We have something like that, not only for the end of this year, but if perhaps you're on vacation for the end of the year, perhaps it might be something you'll be interested in using next year. Okay, let's take a look at GRC highlights for 2023. The big one, the new SEC disclosure rules. This has been a topic of many conversations. We've had it on some of our BHIS news, talking about the news on Monday. We've had it on some of our Thursday and Wednesday talks. Okay, this is disconcerting for us for a number of reasons. We're being asked, if we're a publicly traded company, to disclose material cyber incidents to the SEC within 4 days if the incident is determined to be material. And let me remind you on my standard line, I'm not an attorney. I don't believe CJ is one. CJ, are you an attorney?
No, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express one time.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. Material just means it's going to impact the financial health, operations, or the integrity of the company. So there, I saved you all from going to law school. Okay, so this new SEC disclosure rules, some of you may have read this, some of you may not, but this week the Department of Justice came out with new guidance. It's actually, I believe, a little bit of breathing room. If you believe that your incident may impact national security, and I know sometimes we joke about that because we hear it a lot in movies, but in all seriousness, if it could endanger national security or endanger the public whatsoever, you can file a process with the FBI to not actually have your disclosure be public. There's a link at the bottom of the slide here if that's something that interests you, if you work for a publicly traded company. But instead of preaching all gloom and doom here, what we want to focus on is what you can actually do or some follow-up steps in this GRC presentation. And one of the things we want to highlight is we're going to be talking about updating policies and procedures. But in this particular conversation, we're going to talk about updating your incident response plans, your IR policy and your IR plan. In light of these new material disclosures to the SEC, we're suggesting, and some other smart people are suggesting as well, that you set up a disclosure committee. A disclosure committee includes the lawyers, your compliance people, maybe your insurance people, your underwriters, professionals who can help you determine materiality. I'm sure I'm speaking to some compliance people today, a lot of cyber people. Maybe there's some attorneys on here at home as well, but set up a disclosure committee and those professionals who can actually determine what your materiality is. And speaking of GRC processes, CJ, is there anything else that you would like to add about these SEC disclosures?
Yeah, I found it odd that they went with 4 days, which everything else since GDPR has been 72 hours or whatever. But the time constraints are interesting. That FBI exemption, you better make sure it's some sort of an impactful 0 day. Probably. I just heard this on the Cyber Law podcast, this discussion, and it makes sense. Kind of interesting. Those jurisdiction battles are interesting. But I like the thing about your team. Like none of us should ever really do anything in a vacuum. You want the tech people. When you're dealing in compliance, you want everybody on the risk side, the compliance side, everybody in on that decision making. So you have a discussion about it.
Excellent. And I like your point, CJ, there that we have 72 hours in our head, and then all of a sudden now we got to think in terms of 4 days. But perhaps they're trying to elevate or bring notice to how serious this is. Yeah. And I'm sure we've talked at length before about the former CISO of SolarWinds who was actually arrested. And CJ, I know we've had a lot of water cooler conversations about that, but what's a key point that people miss in that particular situation where CISOs start freaking out about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a bunch of questions on there about steering committees and answering it. And like, don't we already have this? And it's like, this is internal to you guys about how you're going to make this decision. So the one person said, why don't disclosure committees already exist? I'm like, I don't know, at your company? Our company, the disclosure committee is whoever John talks to. So.
And the other thing I want to add about the SolarWinds incident is the former CISO is being charged potentially with criminal charges. So that sometimes gets lost in the conversations. Are you ready to go on to the next one, CJ?
Let's do it.
Okay, we can't have one of these GRC talks without talking about privacy. We're going to revisit the California Privacy Rights Act, CPRA. Now, some of you might be saying CPRA, what isn't it CCPA? Well, CCPA was updated to California Privacy Rights Act. Again, the original CCPA was aimed at protecting individuals' rights with data privacy. The nuance, or the maybe not so nuanced feature of CPRA, is it now includes data privacy rights for employees. CPRA outlines how businesses must collect, store, use, and share customer information or customer data. And just to remind you, that includes name, email addresses, social security numbers, physical addresses, and other pieces of PII. And sometimes people say, well, gosh, that seems like a lot of information. And well, if I just Google myself, that information's out on the internet. Information that's publicly available in government records is not considered personal information under CCPA, CPRA, too many letters there. Okay. Another thing. So CJ, what would be our recommendation to folks listening to this webcast and what they should do for CCPA and CPRA?
I say comply. I don't. I don't find there to be anything that's particularly onerous or anything that's much beyond, good practice. So and when you're doing business, so this is like GDPR. Don't get me started on my lawyer hat about where's the jurisdiction. You can try to fight it all you want. Google couldn't because they're a megapolis company and they have presence over there. The bottom line is it was a lot easier with GDPR to just go along, get along. There's nothing crazy in there. And the things that are like, you have to develop a system and an organization that can deal with the requirements. In California, we do business with California companies, so they want us to do it. The way GDPR said is you're a European person if you're in Europe, not a European citizen. You're not. So for us, those things apply. Why fight it when it's not something crazy? So.
I like what you said there. And again, you're probably going to hear us repeat this over and over in the webinar. It's time to update your policies. And this sort of conversation around data privacy rights, do you have a data protection policy? Do you talk about who are your data owners? Who are your data subjects? Who are your data stewards? And if any of those terms don't make sense, what I said, please let us know. Be happy to have another conversation about who's actually interacting with data, whose data it is, and what your responsibilities are with that data as an organization.
And for a lot of organizations like mine, who's the data steward? Hi. Also the COO, also the CISO, also whatever hats. So for you one-person companies where you're the IT guy and the security person, you're it. It doesn't, you feel like what you're trying to do is you're trying to put a 1 pound lump of sugar in a 10-pound bag in this case, versus the converse of trying to put 10 pounds in a 1 pound bag. You have to do it all. And so that's why you go out and you look at somebody else's privacy policy that they put on their website, because you're going to get customers that are going to put a questionnaire out to you, say, we're not doing business with you unless you have a privacy policy. You're like, well, I really don't need one because I'm in South Dakota. Well, you can fight that and maybe you lose a customer, versus just go out and borrow one from somebody else.
You promised that we wouldn't do math in this presentation. I'm a bit disappointed. You're on the naughty list now, okay?
What?
Okay, so that's a little bit of CPRA. Perhaps some of you on the Discord channels are thinking, well, heck, that's old news. We're doing a roundup of 2023, and these are also gentle reminders because there's been a lot of new state privacy regulations, updates to data breach laws. We're just giving you a gentle reminder here at the holiday times to keep these acts and these regulations in mind. They don't ever go away, unfortunately. I bet you wish some of them would go away, don't you, CJ?
Yeah, well, that's not really reality now, is it?
It really isn't. All right, let's go on to our next topic. Okay, the New York Department of Financial Services, NYCRR 500. Again,
New York is like the new California. Like, actually, New York is leading the way instead of California. California is a lagger in some cases now on these new great
preach
laws.
Preach it, CJ. Tell us about this one.
Oh, why? So Class A companies are pretty big companies for one, right? There's a great, we didn't put the link in here, Kelley, to that little article, which was a nice little summary that I sent for this. Increased reporting,
sorry, boss.
Increased reporting requirements, expands on those obligations. It was all these but the interesting thing was that we talked about was that the entire regulation goes into effect the 29th, and then but not the reporting requirement started December 1st. So you're late already. You're probably out of compliance.
So CJ, I don't know if all of our listeners are aware of this, but you're talking about New York being sort of showing leadership. I'm glad because there's so many financial organizations in New York, but also the New York Department of Financial Services was a instrumental in forming the new SEC disclosure law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, so I'm not finding that anything they're doing is like super crazy. This will get really rough for us if other organizations come out with it. Like one of the things that always frustrates me is customers try to inject, you will report to us within 24 hours of a breach. And I pushed back on that, not because I wouldn't be happy to report, but the standard thing from, like I said, from GDPR forward was 72 hours. So when the state of California, if they said 12 hours and South Dakota says 4 and somebody else says 60, you're creating a Tower of Babel effect where you're like, I don't know. Our whole thing is we do our best effort anyway, but that's the only thing I worry about with sort of what I call the Tower of Babel effect with all these states coming up with different things. If any of them go off road and get crazy, it kind of messes things up a little.
So CJ, I was listening carefully to the words you use. I heard incident, and some people talk about breach. What does the requirement to report have to do with an incident versus a breach?
Well, it depends on what your incident response plan says, but the reporting here for SEC and others is a breach. We have security incidents all the time. Incidents can be false positives. So a breach is you've had an intrusion and data has been leaked. Am I correct on that, Kelley?
Oh, absolutely. And breach in a lot of organizations and states, breach is an actual legal term. And so, once we start throwing around legal terms, now the lawyers are involved. And I want to add to what you're saying here is the term breach, it means something, and it's a big deal. It's a capital B. And we don't want to be using that word and throwing it around if it really isn't yet. I like how you said we have incidences all the time. An incident could be somebody forgot their password. An incident could be failure of a firewall rule. We need that time to be able to figure out what's going on. And to your point, if an organization is saying you need to notify us in 12 hours, my goodness, we may have to get supplemental team members on site, and that may take 4 to 5 hours to even get them to start looking at what's going on.
Oh, CJ's legalistic Weasley on that is, oh yeah, I realized we had a breach, but I didn't know you were affected until just now. So.
Okay, so for just as a little wrap up here, for those of you who might be giving me the silent eye roll, yes, the New York regulations have been around for a long time, but they've really firmed them up. Just to highlight, we've got the new reporting of cybersecurity incidences that started on December 1st. We've got additional requirements when you do report the cyber incidences. Also, there are increased requirements for chief information security officers. Also, another nuance that we did not put on the slide, CJ, was boards of directors and board members need to understand cybersecurity a little bit better. And this actually really makes me kind of excited because I've gone into board meetings where I've had to explain very rudimentary terms. And now, granted, I've been around in the industry for a long time, and things have changed a bit. But if your cybersecurity awareness program doesn't include senior leadership or your boards of directors, and you're in New York, it's a good opportunity for you to go back and read through the new information in the Second Amendment and help your boards of director, your senior leadership understand cybersecurity risk. And since I'm on my soapbox, let me add one other thing as well. Remember, I know we've got technical wizardry in the Discord channels. Mm-hmm. Remember, some of those words, even us other techies don't understand what they mean or don't understand exactly the implication of using such a powerful tool. So if you are trying to train senior leadership and boards of directors, remember, they're not as technically gifted perhaps as you are, or they maybe don't spend as much time with the technology as you do.
That's why they hired you as the technical expert, is to translate to them. And I've talked about, right, to be effective, you don't just need to be technically correct. You probably need to be politically correct. And that means talking to the politicians and convincing them, selling them, turning them into allies. And that communication is important. They're the people who fund you. They're the people who force other people to comply with your wishes. There's your comply again, and you. So yeah, communication and look, we can all get annoyed when you're presented with somebody who just doesn't understand, or you can look at it as an opportunity to teach and to fan out your knowledge and influence people. So you have two ways of looking at that.
And I have found that if there's a concept that's a little out of my grasp, especially when we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and algorithms, I struggle with learning algorithms. If I have to take the time to explain it to somebody else, boy, I really got to dig in and understand it and think about analogies that will help me understand it. So I'm really glad you brought up that point, CJ. Okay, on to the next one. I know this is our ugly sweater, happy holidays presentation. I tried to avoid putting the word death in the slides, but I did want to talk about third-party cookies because in our conversations this week, you remember, CJ, you said to me, what's the deal with all of these banners and things I got to click on? What's going on with cookies? And when you said that, I thought you were asking me how many Christmas cookies I ate for breakfast with my coffee, but I realized that that wasn't what you're talking about. You were actually talking about your cookie banners on your PC, or excuse me, your Mac. Okay, so some of you probably know this better than we do, but let's just take a step back and get everybody on the same page. Cookies. When you visit a website, you may be prompted to accept cookies. Cookies are little files that talk about your location, perhaps what you like. And what we're talking about here is the death of third-party cookies. Now, if I go to the BHIS website, because I want to see what next week's webinar is, because I'm kind of excited about it, BHIS will drop a first-party cookie. That cookie, it helps the website understand you and understand what you're looking for better. But once you go off of the BHIS website, that first party cookie is basically irrelevant at this point. And I know probably some of you are going to say, well, you're more technical folks. But for the sake of discussions here, we get into trouble or we get into privacy concerns when we start dealing with third-party cookies. And third-party cookies, they're like a little shadow. They follow you around. It's kind of like Elf on the Shelf, but for cookies, y'all have Elf on the Shelf. You know, all of a sudden that crazy thing pops up and says, I know what you did. I know how many cookies you had for breakfast, CJ. So what's been happening because of GDPR and CCPA, CCPR, we are moving away from third-party cookies. And actually at the end of 2023, we will see very little third-party cookies left. If you're a developer or a marketing specialist, this may be giving you a bit of angst, and I can understand that. But I'd like to try and put a positive spin on this, because if we're allowed to craft cookies better, it will allow you to create ads that are specifically targeted to the folks you're looking for. So, CJ, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and let's say, isn't it more helpful when you're trying to look for, let's say, car accessories, and they know that you really like Jeep? Because Jeeps, you don't want to be looking at car accessories for a Dodge Challenger. You want it for, it's a Gladiator, right?
Yep. I don't even want the four-door Wrangler stuff. I want the Gladiators. It's truly double-edged, the privacy thing. All our security sleuths, ninjas out there all know how to go anonymous mode and things. So the cookies and they're annoying, and obviously cookies have been abused badly, hence the law responding to it. You had some good stories there, Kelley, about some of that. The abuse, Facebook.
Yes. Oh, but don't get ahead, CJ.
Oh, sorry.
We've got that coming up. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Oh, that was an abrupt shift, wasn't it? So those were the main four big topics that we wanted to touch on in our, what, as we look back on 2023, what do we want to remember? Or if you are in an office and the compliance officer or the CISO walks by and says, so what you think of 2023? You can say, hey, well, let's talk about cookies, or you can talk about CPRA. Now we're going to shift our presentation a little bit, and we're going to talk about Santa's naughty and nice list when it comes to cybersecurity and privacy. Let's start with the nice list, because we all know in cyber, the naughty list may be just a wee bit longer than the nice list. So CJ and I had some good conversations about this. And we wanted to highlight a couple really interesting and exciting things in our field. And the first one, let's talk about the CFO, John Green of Discover Financial Services. He was on a business call with his senior leadership. And I want to point out, and if you remember, Discover Financial Services had a situation. See, I'm avoiding the word incident and breach there, CJ. I'm just going to say incident. They had an incident where data seemed to have gone missing. And he fully admitted that the company had historically underinvested in compliance. And now that they had a little thing happen, it was paying the price right now. Have you ever heard of a CFO actually admitting that on a business call?
Sort of. I mean, so we had some incidents this week at BHIS on how we fight fair, and I said that courage is the rarest value that people have. And what I highlight is that fessing up to the truth and tackling that, it takes some courage. Sometimes you get killed for that, right? You get politically killed, not physically, hopefully. But the courage to face that reality and to share it and say, hey, we're focused on getting better on this. He probably has a very solid program and a lot of political capital. And so he could do that sort of thing. So it's good to be in that. It's good to face reality. So that's what I like to see there. I love seeing that.
So those of us who participate in business meetings with you, you have a cliche. You talk about something that's good for breakfast each and every day.
Feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. So eat it.
I also wanted to highlight this situation with Discover Financial Services because honestly, all of you on this webinar with us and those who will listen afterwards, we hear you, we sympathize with you, we feel your pain. We know we are not in the sexy black hoodies. We are not the people that people are going to go, hey, I got an extra football ticket. Let me ask the compliance specialist to go to the football game with me. We understand that, that's not necessarily, we're not the life of the party, but we keep the lights on at the party and we make sure that we brought beer to the barbecue. So for those of you who are in GRC, we say we thank you, we love you, and we know you've got a tough job ahead of you. And it was just really nice to see this chief financial officer saying, yep, we made a mistake. We didn't invest in the people who save our bacon.
And if you're the single source, you know that you wish you had somebody to delegate this stuff or to take this responsibility off your shoulders. So it has to be done. And again, I point to all this, my love-hate relationship with policy and compliance and everything else. It does establish a foundation. A lot of you try to have good organizations without this and without the underpinning of law and order. Which is what policy and these things establish. And then compliance and audit, they just create the assurance that the things are actually getting done. So you don't end up, hopefully, if you've laid that right and you're implementing your plans and you have the controls, then you aren't one of the people who ends up in the newspaper. So it all has to work together.
Amen. Preach it, brother. Preach it. Okay, so who else is on our naughty list? or I'm sorry, on the nice list. I haven't gotten to the naughty list yet. Let's talk about the National Cybersecurity Strategy Implementation Plan that came out this year. It came out earlier this year. Maybe some of you remember it, some of you don't. But I'm super excited about this. Those of you who have been in cybersecurity as long as, well, not me, because I'm not old, but as long as CJ has been in cybersecurity, you know that the federal government hasn't been the most organized when it comes to how it did cybersecurity. We had different departments, different organizations doing their own thing. It's nice to finally see the United States having an implementation plan and the formation of CISA a couple of years ago. So this comprehensive plan has over 65 initiatives aimed at mitigating cyber risk and boosting cybersecurity initiatives. Remember, CJ, back in the Obama administration, we had the ISACs, the Information Sharing Centers, and these were portals or organizations set up so like-minded verticals or like-minded companies could get together and share their information. For example, there's a financial services ISAC, there's a health ISAC. I learned this week that there's a water authority ISAC. I did not know that before. But basically, I'm super excited to see that we're actually trying to organize our cybersecurity initiatives a little bit better, and also to kind of look at our country as a whole instead of looking at it as separate departments, organizations, that sort of thing.
So everyone's, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Sometimes it's not appreciated. Look, everything the government do is a little bit of a mixed bag, right? Because there's unintended consequences to things. But in generally, I think this is good focus. It's kind of, do we talk about NIST later? Like, some people hate it, but at least NIST brings clarity. And again, this is kind of documented best practices. It's the government giving their stamp of approval on these things. So if you kind of look at these things and follow them and use them, then you're in alignment, like with what, if you get in a court of law, you're like, well, we were following all 65 initiatives. Sure, whatever. But I think it's good. I think it's good when we're clarifying on these things.
Well, and that was a great segue, CJ, talking about NIST. One of the exciting things that I've recently noticed from NIST is they've come out with a differential privacy guideline in terms of working with artificial intelligence, and not just that, but also other privacy avenues. And that's kind of a segue into our last item here, in investing in AI. One of the things that the Biden administration did, and I'm not trying to get political, this is just a statement of fact, the administration came together and released its AI directives. And basically what that means is it's an opportunity or an invitation for NIST and other organizations to move forward and start investing more, because the executive leadership has said, listen, artificial intelligence is something that's already here. We're already using it. Let's at least put some guardrails on it. And that was something that I was excited to see. But in terms of those of us who roll up our sleeves and deal with information security each and every day, one of the most exciting things is seeing how our security community and our vendors have invested in AI. We've been seeing new machine learning algorithms used in EDR solutions, in SIM solutions. And one of the nice things about this is not only do we have new tools, but we've got tools that will help us arrive at better decisions faster. And CJ, was there anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, AI is such the buzz. It's become the magic term. It's the giant shibboleth that's going to kill us all. It's going to save us all. It's none of those things. Look, to me, it's advanced Google, and I know the techies are going to jump all over me, but AI is a tool. It can, like all tools, you can mess up your good table with the hammer. You can also build a house. AI has to be done properly, and there's all this stuff about how we're going to control it and how do we make sure it doesn't kill us all great stuff. But bottom line, AI is doing some pretty cool things. It's also doing some pretty messed up things, because humans are capable of taking anything and using it for good or ill. So it's a
Messing it up.
powerful tool.
I totally agree. Amen. Again, preach it, brother.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, let's get over to the naughty list. And those of you who joined us for pre-show banter, we are talking a little bit about the naughty and nice list. Now, you, CJ, and all of us know that this naughty list is long. We couldn't possibly fit all the naughty customers, vendors, businesses on the list. There are 3 ones that we really sort of wanted to highlight. Those of you who've been following our Monday Talking About InfoSec podcast, you know, we've been talking about Alpha and Black Cat quite a bit.
Next slide.
Well, you don't want to talk about this slide?
Yeah, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'll pick up the beat here. Okay, so there have been numerous ransomware attacks against healthcare. Also, if you remember, there was an interesting story about Alpha V and Black Hat actually filling out an SEC disclosure on a company that they attacked, saying, "Hey, by the way, you forgot to admit this on your 8K filing to the SEC." That was kind of funny. But it's
brilliant. It's brilliant and diabolical, and I think there's something in there about you can't use, like in law, right? You can't use evidence that you get, but I don't know. That was brilliant on their part to really ratchet up the punishment.
I don't know if I would say brilliant. It's certainly worth a conversation. But we put them on our naughty list this year because they have been going after so many organizations, claiming credit for different types of ransomware attacks. And earlier this week, I believe, we talked about that they had potentially been taken down by law enforcement. I can't confirm or deny that quite yet, but I'm suggesting, even though they are on the naughty list, y'all want to keep your eyes on Alpha V Black Hat Group, because I don't think they're necessarily going away anytime soon.
Well, that's great. I hope they did get taken down. A lot of things. So if we go back to the nice list, I saw numerous stories, and I continue it, and I cheer it every time it happens. That who's the international Interpol? Anytime the U.S. does, they are getting to some of these folks and taking them down, and that's what we need for these people as a consequence. And so I would cheer on government's efforts to get to these folks, and when that happens, it's great news. So. And they're all on the naughty list, every one of the APTs, right?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, CJ, about consequences, because a lot of times us GRC folks, we feel like we're kind of in a vacuum, or nobody's listening to us, or nobody wants to invite us to our party. But now that we're seeing consequences, I think we can stand up a little taller and sit up and say, yes, the work I do does matter. It does protect us, and there are consequences to not following the good things we're supposed to do.
Yep.
This is where you say, preach it, sister.
Preach it, sister.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The other one I wanted to add was talking about Epic Games. Now, I'm sure all of you are going, Epic Games. Oh yeah, Fortnite, the people who make Fortnite. One of the big cases this year is FTC secured $275 million fine for violations of COPPA. Now, I know we've got GRC people on here, but if we have some other folks, that's the Child Online Protection Act, alleging that Epic was collecting children's PI without parental consent. Again, maybe I am sounding a little bit preachy, but there are rules in place for a reason. And remember, COPPA is, I was going to say 13 or 14 years. I think it's 13 years old. I'm sure somebody will correct me in Discord, and thank you for doing that. Okay, and it can't be the naughty list without some mention of Facebook/Meta. The largest GDPR fine in history on record, it may be in the Guinness Book of World Records, is GDPR fine for Meta, $1.3 billion for violating the EU data privacy rules. And I know, CJ, you're talking about GDPR kind of going along to get along. We can't ignore GDPR. Would you agree?
But other people can't. because we're not Facebook or Google, who have been dragged into court, like I said, because of the multinational. So beware. If they get you in court, it could be quite pricey. That's a lot of cookies right there. 1.2.
That's a lot of cookies. Okay. So I don't want to dwell too long on the naughty list because honestly, most of our webinars and newscasts are about the bad things happening in the world. So let's move on to something maybe a little bit more fun, a little bit more pleasant. Let's talk about some BHIS holiday recipes. Okay, let's start out with one of our favorite recipes. Those of, well, actually, CJ, let me hand it over
Joff,
to
the
you.
man himself, is here. And look, Joff is, it's so, I always talk about this, about who's good in cybersecurity. It's like people who are multi-talented. So like we talk about musicians, and that's certainly Joff. And so if Joff recommends a recipe, I'd say you probably ought to try this one.
Who, me?
You.
So, all right, first of all, I cannot take all the credit because I ran around the house going, oh God, I need a recipe. And my delightful and adorable wife said, I've got one for you.
I'm so disappointed. You didn't come up with this yourself?
No, but
DQ, Kelley, DQ, take him off the list.
it is Australian relative inspired, because one of the things you might notice here for those of us in the United States is you see an unusual ingredient. And the unusual ingredient here is golden syrup. Now, let me make an inquiry, Kelley or CJ. Have either of you heard of such a substance?
I'm not sure I'm going to touch that one.
No, Joff, I haven't heard of that.
No, it's kind of like, does the word treacle remind you of anything? Well, you know, it's or hit a chord. It's one of those things you're going to have to Google out there, because there's this particular, and this is the problem in the States. It's a problem in all countries, actually. A lot of people will write recipes and they will reference a particular brand name of something in the recipe, right? Mm-hmm. That's what this stuff is. It's a brand name of a maple syrup, well, sort of brown sugar / maple syrup kind of stuff. All right, so you're gonna have to go off and Google this. But that's, aside from that, as long as you're using metric measures, then the recipe should work. Here's the other thing. Here in the good old United States, a teaspoon is not a teaspoon, right? And some people may have run into this. These are things. But anyway, so this is a mixed bag. This is what I'm saying. So do a little research before you go off making the brandy snaps. But if you get them correct, they're absolutely delightful. I would highly recommend.
Joff,
the picture does look good for sure.
Joff, where's the brandy?
Where's the brandy? Hey, well, you're supposed to just have that on the side, and so you can eat your snap and sip your brandy.
Nice.
I feel like you tried to dupe us on this one, Joff. I gotta be honest.
It's the old bait and switch.
It was, brandy snaps. And I'm looking through the rest of the brandy.
And of course, if you're joining us from Canada, you're going to have a different interpretation of this. And you just got to remember that oven temperature here, this is all mixed up. That oven temperature is actually written in Fahrenheit, not Celsius. So just to clarify, that would be 200 Celsius for those who are looking at it.
Oh my God, you did that in your head?
All the time, my friend. This happens to me because every time I'm talking to a relative, you know, it's one of these things. It's like, we talk about temperature or something, and it's like 70. What's that? You know, you have to do the quick mental gymnastics.
Nice.
So anyway, but I would recommend these things. They're great. Also, an Australian thing is a killer fruitcake. Believe it or not, they're not a joke in Australia. You can get really good ones. And for some reason, they've turned into a funny pun in the United States. Where
no, I love fruitcake.
But I love good fruitcake too. But anyway, I digress.
Me too. Thank you so much for sharing your brandyless brandy snaps with us.
My brandyless brandy snaps. You know, you could always mix in a bit of brandy with the syrup. I mean, it'll work.
The brandy,
no problem.
It probably tastes like brandy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Joff. We do appreciate it, and we appreciate your generosity in sharing it with everybody. We've got more recipes to get to.
All right, let's do it. I'll jump back out. I'll let the next person jump in. Oh, Melissa's not even here. Okay, we just have to talk.
Yeah.
Well, so this I'll provide a little background on this, and then CJ, you can riff on the rest of it. So, Melissa, for those, well, actually, CJ, what's Melissa's role at BHIS?
Melissa's the director. I know people say director of what, and he's like, no, she's just the director.
The director, right? It's kind of like this all-encompassing thing.
But she is again multi-talented, and she is an amazing cake baker. So she does wedding cakes, and so she says this cake is good. Trust me, it's good. But all that peppermint candy on there has got to go, because if I was really going to make my ideal ugly sweater, I would do like a reindeer throwing up, and in the throw up would be pieces of candy cane, because peppermint is the worst candy on the planet. It's absolutely heinous. You can't have it. I don't know why it's on this cake. There's nothing wrong with a good thin mint, but trust me, this cake is the bomb here. So if you make it, good luck. Usually things she doesn't require a doctorate in cooking, but I assume that this is achievable.
From my conversations with Melissa, she actually perhaps the picture looks a little haphazard. It's not haphazard. It's rustic, because it encourages you to focus on the flavors, not on the prettiness of the cake.
Oh. Yeah, she does some amazing ones. She does the fun ball.
I don't know how she does it. Melissa has lots of children running around her all the time, so to be able to actually maintain enough focus to be able to cook the cake with all those kids
full
running.
Time, she does the cake, she homeschools, she bakes like a fiend. It's like, what?
I mean, I don't know.
It's the inhuman thing that the Strand's capability of doing it all, I guess.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Oh, we got a Heather recipe. Lovely.
Oh, CJ, I have a typographical error there. I couldn't spell farfengruven.
Freaking nougat.
Oops. This is not layered peppermint cheesecake. We stole this from another place, but this is the Pfeffernussen from Heather. Again, as all testers know, do what Heather says. So I would try to make this and see how this one does. Someone was jamming on me for the molasses. There is molasses in this one.
Well, look at the first 4 ingredients. I mean, if you don't gain like 10 pounds just reading those 4 ingredients, then
shortening. God loves shortening.
What's wrong with you?
See, probably people in other countries go, shortening? What's shortening? It's fat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Next one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope that these are familiar to folks in the Discord channel. Holly cookies, some people call them Christmas wreath cookies. Joff, have you ever seen these before?
You know what? I don't think I have. They're very green.
They're very green. It's cornflakes and vanilla marshmallows. And if you like Rice Krispie treats, you'll love Holly cookies. My mother would make these all the time. Every year she would make like a triple batch just for me. And yeah, I was a little girl, and I would have like a green ring around my mouth from eating these cookies. Love, love, love them. Sorry, I don't have a link in the slide here, but if you search Holly cookies or wreath cookies, top notch. Okay, CJ, this one's for you.
Byzantine priest.
Probably just has to take it to the next level, right? So we're talking about all these laws and things, and you know how I can be a curmudgeon and complain. And we're talking about Byzantine, because the Byzantine Empire had like a bureaucracy that couldn't be beat. And so Kelley cleverly worked it into the Byzantine priest church window cookies, which these actually sound pretty good, I guess. It looks like that candy they used to have that was white with all the bits of other candy in it that we used to have in the US. It's like, but this looks, is there a nut in there, Kelley?
Yeah.
Yes, wait a minute. Nuts are good by themselves. I'll eat nuts, mixed nuts. I love pralines. But when you put nuts in a brownie or a cookie, and there's a nut in here, and so it's off the list, Kelley.
Sorry. These are quite tasty. Those of you who aren't very fond of coconut, you can leave the coconut off as well. But these they're very sweet, a lot of chocolate. It is like eating candy. Okay, so those were some of our cookie recipes, and I know that we've lost some people on the webcast, but it is the holiday
No,
season.
we haven't. It's bigger than when I looked last time. It was 162. Now it's 242.
Okay,
All right.
but so we've had our cookies, we've had our brandy and our schnapps. Somebody's got to clean up after the party. Let's talk about our end of the year GRC checklist.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
take it away.
it's not just the end of the year, it's the beginning of the next year. So, but as your year wraps up, there are wickets you need to have hit. And hopefully you're not just looking to get your pen test in now, because we're sold out almost into the second quarter now. But so things like, you probably have a requirement to make sure your policies are up to date. Look, I keep a change page in my policies, and I just go and I put revision date or reviewed and approved on this date to just at least check that box. But your policies are something I tend to do. Things come up during the year and I make sure they're up to date. I actually put the date of my policy and the title of my policy so I can go look in the folder at a glance and see which policies I reviewed this year. And so it's an important thing. You want to make sure. Someone commented over in Discord earlier about writing stupid policies, crazy policies, insane policies you can't follow. We take kind of a basic and simplistic approach that you should probably make sure your policies can be complied with and do make sense to the greatest extent you can. So keep those puppies up to date. Just part of, I mean, people would say spring cleaning. We have all these checkpoints. Make sure they're up to date at the end of the year. BHIS, we do our IR tabletop exercise and our risk assessment at the end of the year, because in December, the systems team tends to have more cycles right at the end. If you're in holiday retail, that might not be the case, but this is the time of the year and you need to make sure you did these things. So we do our IR tabletop. In a pinch, you haven't done your IR tabletop, whip out the back doors and breeches with some eggnog and some brandy and have somebody take minutes and say, we did our IR tabletop. Ta-da! The risk assessment, again, this is, much as I have the love-hate thing with policy and everything, I believe the risk assessment is the most critical thing. It's something every organization needs to do, and do it in a super simple method. If you have to, just put up a spreadsheet that talks about the risks. The risks are we might get hit by ransomware. We might get sued for GDPR. We might get hit with a tornado. Have your simple risks and then what your controls are and things that mitigate them, and have management take a look at them and sign off on them. So for me, again, this comes up to me maybe because my natural ops cycle is December for this, but for all of you, make sure this is done. And then the whole thing too is maybe you didn't get it done. Maybe you didn't get your pen test done. Well, then this is a bad year, and you may not have compliance gurus are going to step down and fine you $1.3 billion. But why don't we start planning for next year, right? So do that. The general cleanup, so you should be doing this as you go, but Kelley and I thought of a few categories. One was your data. I know PCI, someone asked about PCI checklist earlier. There's a bunch of things you have to do by the book in PCI, annually, semi-annually, monthly, weekly. You got to always keep up on all those things. But one of the things they ask you to do is you can only keep credit card data around for 90 days, must be encrypted, all these good things. But you probably all have a data destruction policy. Are you in compliance with it? Are there things you should clean up with that? When we thought of that, we also thought of accounts. For us, we turn off accounts the day you're terminated. But then monthly, we do a check to make sure everything's good. And then annually, you better really make doubly sure and revisit your service accounts and things. Make sure nothing's crept in there. And then after accounts, we thought about, what about applications like on your phone? We all know that we have like 6 screens of applications on our phone that we don't use, which is just a pile of vulnerabilities. Clean it up. If you can clean it up out of your environment, and good luck, because BHIS is kind of a small business. I'd say we're up to mid-sized business, but the number of apps we have out there is just like, as they said in Dances with Wolves, like the stars. But if you can clean things up, clean up services, things like that, great time of year to at least come up with a plan to clean it up in the new year, maybe. And then finally, your third-party relationships. So we always have to keep up for our SOC 2 Type 2. We have to look at what our SOC partners or our third-party partners are. If you've got third parties you're not using, get rid of them. If you've got ones that are in existence, are they known? Do you have documentation around them? Do you understand exactly what they have? So I'm interested in Discord. If anyone has anything that I missed about things you do at the end of the year, I like to populate those. Oh, and Kelley, part of the reason I was distracted as we went through, and I told you change slides because I thought we hadn't changed slides, is because I'm handling all the Q&A in the Q&A section of Zoom. So
well, we still miss Farfanugan.
I can't even say it now that you've messed me up. Farfanugan.
Thank you. Okay, so as we're wrapping up, we've got about 5 minutes left at our time together. We've talked about our GRC checklist. We've talked about some of the big hitters in GRC in 2023, but we wanted to leave you with a very special holiday cocktail recipe.
Oh yeah, I have to come back to this. Yeah, so million recipes for old fashioned. One of my former bosses uses maple syrup in his, and it's really good. It's kind of a unique twist, kind of like pizza. There's no such thing as a bad old fashioned, but my very favorite is from St. Augustine's Distillery, and you can get it online. It's expensive. It's $20. I think it's $20 if you go to their distillery, which I highly advise. Their old fashioned mix can not be beat. It is so good. And then for me, a filthy old fashioned, I took it because some people like a dirty martini, somebody like a Joff. But when people make a dirty martini, right, they pour the olive juice in there and it clouds it up. My way of clouding it up is one, I love cherry. So I usually take the cherry juice and I take extra spoonfuls, or I dump a little extra in there. And then the little thing with the little spritz of just a little hint of the orange twist in the old fashioned. Who can even taste that? I take the whole orange segment and I squeeze it into the old fashioned. Now, some people say, well, that destroys your bourbon. Well, you can use a cheap one. I've heard you can use very inexpensive bourbons on your old fashioned and they're good.
They even have non-alcoholic bourbon now.
Good point, Jason, because the flavor is great. My problem is I'll guzzle them. And what I'll do with alcohol, I literally just touch it to my lips and just get the taste in my mouth. And so that's what I do. So no such thing as a bad old fashioned.
Agreed. So CJ, Jason, and Deb, we're open for questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hello, everybody. Welcome. I almost wanted to say welcome. No, you've been here for a while. So if there was any questions that you had that were not answered, feel free to ask them again here in Zoom or in Discord. And we have like 2 more minutes. So what I want to do is, Kelley and CJ, I want to give your final thoughts. And you kind of did your final thoughts, but like if you had a one takeaway kind of situation from this whole webcast. And so Kelley, I'll start with you. Your one takeaway, like if there's nothing else they remember from today, what would be the one thing you would want them to take away from today?
Your efforts are not futile. On our nice list, we talked about the CFO of Discovery Financial Services. That was one very public situation of a company saying, yeah, we didn't invest in compliance. Perhaps you're in the same situation where you don't feel your company is investing in GRC as much as it should be. Keep fighting the good fight. We are building our GRC community here at BHIS. And if you ever got any problems, questions, concerns, or you just need to vent about something, we're here for you.
Yeah, I'll say GRC is hard. Like everything in security, it's just hard. And so use your community, use the people around you, steal, borrow, beg. We're working on, we're providing services in this area, and it really helps to get other people's opinion. And I think our whole thing, Kelley, do we have another slide? Because we talked about giving. This is the season of hope and giving and being connected. And so that's what we do with our webcasts. That's what we try to do with our business. That's what all business is about, in my view, is giving people your best and accepting it back from them. And God, we love what we do here. It's so much fun, and it's fun having you people here to do it with.
Yeah. Thank you. Kelley, go ahead and kill your slides just so that we get full screen cameras again, so that we can do the question and answer this way. Before we move into a ton of questions, I do want to let everyone know, if you're in Discord and you haven't engaged with us yet, please do. Inside Discord, we kind of tag everyone who engages. And then once you hit 10 webcasts, not like the first person to hit 10 webcasts, but once you hit 10 webcasts, we'll have something special for you. And so we saw today that it's, for some people, it's their first webcast. Some people, it was their 5th webcast or 6th webcast. And even if you've I've been coming to these for a very long time. Well, we started 7 weeks ago. And so we'll continue going forward. And so once you hit 10, then 11 and 12 and 13, and then we'll have something for people who hit 25, and we'll have something for people who hit 50 and for 100. So we just want to say thank you for showing up. And I know that was not good grammar, and that's fine. I'll fix it in the transcript. Okay, so I love today's webcast, and we're going to go ahead and do like the wait. Thank you so much for joining us for this Black Hills Information Security webcast. If you need to take off, we completely understand, but we'll stick around for a few minutes of post-show banter, answering questions, your questions, if you have them. And we appreciate you being here. If you need to go, we'll see you next week for a web app pen testing webcast, if you want to come back for that. And then we'll take a 2-week break, and then we'll be back at the beginning of the year with John Strand is going to give his first webcast in quite some time. And so he'll kick off the year at the beginning of January. So, all right. Now what do? All right. Webcast is over. We are now in post-show banter.
Don't forget to unplug Deb.
I can't. I live here now.
Just want to put a star on her head.
Yeah,
Put a star on her head.
she's in our live stream room here at the office, and she's like, "Hey, I have a question, but I can't get up because I'm plugged in."
Just like yelling out the door at him.
I can imagine she walks across the room.
It got worse through the webcast too.
Kelley and CJ, thank you for doing the GRC webcast. GRC's not like new for us, but it is definitely something that it's a new service for us. And Kelley, thank you for spearheading doing our GRC efforts. And I mean, part of that is like letting people know that we do have GRC services, because sometimes we have customers who are like, you have an active SOC? Why didn't you tell us? Like, you have continuous pen testing services? Why didn't you tell us? You have threat hunting that you offer? I thought you guys were just pen testing and red teaming. It's like, well, yeah. But we take the knowledge that we have from red teaming and pen testing, and like, how do we apply that to doing blue team work? Or how do we apply that to GRC? How do we apply that to all the training that we do? So we take the things that we're doing, and how do we apply it to everything else? All right, Kelley, first question. Lots of smaller to mid-sized companies do not register or properly document their risk. What are some cloud or on-prem solutions to enable this activity so that risk is properly documented, tracked, and actioned?
Well, Jason, I appreciate you asking me. CJ appears very adamant about this, so I'll let him answer
It's like
first.
peppermint. Do not use a portal. Use a spreadsheet, for the love of God. It's so simple. The NIST 800-37, am I right on the number, Kelley?
I'm not sure.
Has a great guidance on risk assessment. In fact, they've got a whole ready-made like 80 risks for you to just kind of address, and they've got a format for your categories of your controls and your mitigators and the intensity of the attack and blah 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 blah. And then the bottom line is the residual risk, and it's a simple spreadsheet, and even a board of directors, and especially a board of directors, understands looking at that column and go, what's our residual risk on virus infection? Well, we have antivirus in place, we have a SOC, we have this, we have endpoint detection and response. So the incident in the wild is high. The residual risk for us is very low. Boards can look down the column and say, hey, this risk here says ransomware moderate. Is there any way to drive that risk down? It is super simple to do this. You don't have to go above and beyond. Keep it simple and build up. You can build it up over time. But do not use some stupid third-party portal software. That's ridiculous.
Also, CJ, you had so much passion talking about that. I just want to
Portals
add
make
one.
me crazy.
Let me add one thing. A lot of us have had to take our certification exams, CISSP, CISA, whatever, ABC 1, 2, 3. And we've had to memorize this risk formula. And honestly, some of those certification tests do an awful job talking about cyber risk and risk management. If you have to do a whole lot of math to understand your risk in your organization, you're not doing it right. As I've said before, I'm not crazy about math. It has a time and a place. But if there are ready available tools and spreadsheets, please go use them.
Yep.
Great answer.
Someone asked PreShow Banter. Yes,
Yes.
PreShow Banter.
It actually preceded pre-show banter.
Yeah, and also if anyone has a favorite holiday recipe that they want to put inside Discord, feel free to do so. I'm having a hard time breathing from that dirty what do you call it?
Filthy old fashioned?
The dirty blanket I was wearing.
Blanket. The moldy blanket.
He'll bring it up.
Oh, Kelley, somebody asked for those books on your back. What did you recommend on the books for your books? I don't know if they were GRC related. I answered 38 questions, just so you know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're the best. So the books behind me, they're a mix of everything. Yes, I do have this cybersecurity canon back there. The Cuckoo's Egg. Yes, I have some Kevin Mitnick books back there. There's actually a number of history books. There's some business books. That I would say by far the biggest stack are privacy books, because I'm trying to understand privacy law a little bit better, and I'm not a lawyer, and I just don't think that way. I come from an engineering background. Somebody else asked me if what was behind me were board games, and I kind of like that idea. If they were board games, what board games would they be? Joff?
There would be board games about rubber chickens. No. I just squeezed my rubber chicken because I noticed yours was there, and now my dog is going crazy and wanting to eat it.
Of course. Well, I think one of the board games would be Candyland.
Oh, God.
Yeah, with the peppermint sticks. Lovely.
Yes.
Worst candies in the world on Candyland.
I don't know that I gave a good answer, but what board game? What was the right answer? Can someone please tell me?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Chess. That's it. Chess.
Yes.
What board games should be on the shelves behind me if you could make a recommendation?
Backdoors and breaches, nice.
Yeah.
Settlers
Well,
of Catan.
Think off.
with the appropriate level of personality cards to go.
No. You have a whole stack of those. Don't
Monopoly.
I know. Every time I go to a con, I try to give them away, and nobody wants them.
I didn't realize how handsome you are.
They say no when you're like, would you like an autographed card of myself?
Oh,
no, thank you.
I mean, I was at Oliver. You want to just take the chicken, dude? He totally would have taken the chicken.
There's a mousetrap, Brian. Nice suggestion.
Yeah, well, see, look, he's like, oh God, I gotta have the chicken. Anyway, no, I just thought that Kelley was going to mention her chicken because I was so proud to have won a chicken myself. It's a rare career achievement to win the rubber chicken.
Rubber chicken.
And my dog likes it more than I do, clearly. But anyway.
So, Joff, I'll add to what you're saying. So the coveted rubber chicken trophy is one of the things we do at Wild West Hackenfest in the fall timeframe. Yes.
See, even Brian's dog likes it.
I want mine in San Diego, and it basically we do something known as slideshow roulette, where people will get up and pontificate on a random slide deck of who knows what's going to be on the slide deck. It could be sci-fi, it could be plants, it could be OSHA manuals, and it's their job to speak extemporaneously about the slide deck. And so, yes, that is my coveted rubber chicken trophy from San Diego.
Nice.
My 28-pound furball does not want to sit down on me. It's just like, Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? It's like,
Is that dog going camping with you, Joff?
oh, 100%.
Did you pick up your trailer?
No, not until February.
Trailer? What trailer?
Jaffa's becoming trailer trash.
I'm becoming trailer
Aw.
trash.
Are you
That's right.
glamping? Is this what you're doing?
I am totally glamping. I've
Oh, my
got a
lights.
teardrop high end. Like it's gonna be all happening.
Oh, a teardrop. Very
Where's the first destination, Joff?
Have no idea. This is one that I have delegated the decision to the Department of Domestic Affairs, which is not
Big
me.
house.
I like
It's a
that.
Makes
politically
sense.
correct
Yeah.
way of saying I'm not making that call. We'll
Pick it up in February. You got to go someplace warm. Go visit Kelley.
I know. I think
Yes.
actually Florida was on the list. Actually, it was.
Come see me.
The Keys, baby. The Keys.
No joke. We actually found like a campground in the Keys that was like $20 a night somewhere,
nice.
Oh,
and we were gonna take a drive down south and
I'm going to meet you there. That's what I'm going to do from Colorado.
yeah. So we may well just do that. We'll see. Well, I'm struggling now with the decision of whether to tow the trailer behind the Tesla because EVs and trailers are challenging. But anyway.
I feel like we've run out of questions about GRC.
Yeah, I feel like GRC. Oh, by the way, in case
Success.
you didn't know, you can always Google GRC in case you were like me and going, what the hell are they talking about? The GRC. I just hack things and write
We'll
malware.
let you in the club,
How they
Joff.
talk
We'll let you in the
GRC,
club.
Google real quick.
Yeah, you will come up with government risk and compliance governance. Sorry.
Enunciate the government.
Too many brandy snaps.
I didn't eat any. Oh,
Got 0% bourbon and we got brandyless brandy snaps.
yeah, I've actually got to review some reports this afternoon. Oh my God. Anyway.
Well, CJ, Kelley, thank you so much. We'll do more GRC things in 2024,
Hey, we
but
had
you
a
can
pretty good
always
turnout. 240 is that's impressive.
I saw 264. But Jason, I have a request.
okay.
You can't be poo-pooing GRC before we talk about
Yes, you
GRC.
can, Jason. Face reality. It's feedback.
No.
Everybody.
No, but you can Google it.
We put
Tonight
the
I'll be
fun
laying in bed.
funky.
Heading to sleep and going, oh yeah, I did do that before the webcast.
Wait, Kelley, what is
Oh,
risk?
God.
Risk equals risk minus mitigation over cost annual.
Meanwhile, the back of Kelley's head, she's like, risk equals working with you people.
Unmitigated risk.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you for joining us for today's Black Hills Information Security webcast. If you ever need a red team threat hunt, active SOC, penetration test, continuous pen testing, and now GRC services, you know where to find us. Thank you so much, and tune in every single Thursday, and we'll see you again next time. If you've been engaging in Discord, thank you very much. We have something coming for those of you that hit 10 webcast once we figure it out.
Like book it.
Maybe
Maybe
Bill
like
Haskell's
pizza.
still out there. He's a first timer. This is his first one. They get better.
Wave, everybody. Say goodbye to the people. Bye
All
bye.
right, Ryan, kill it with
Thanks for
fire.
joining us
Kill it,
this year.
Ryan.
Bye bye.
Kill it, Ryan.
Happy holidays.
Ryan, I thank you so much for all the work that you do, Ryan.